Well, hello, happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Move the Stairs Friday conversation. How is everybody?
We're great. How about you, Jordan?
Trying to stay warm in my newest edition of the Ugly Christmas sweater. We've got Darth Vader today. There he is.
Friends, if you have not seen these Christmas sweaters, you need to. Our podcast listeners need to log on to Move the Stairs.
Yeah, Move the Stairs. Go to MNC Comms on YouTube, MNC Communications on YouTube, and you can see Jordan's just amazing. You know, there was a time, Jordan, in the 80s when, Christmas meant pulling out at least 7 of those sweaters because you wore one every day, but it was in the 80s.
Well, what do they say about trends? They always come back around once every 40 years. So here we go.
Come back? I don't know if that's come back, Jordan. I think you just brought it back.
Yeah, how old were you in the 80s?
If we go back to 88, A Twinkle in My Dad's Eye, and 89.
My gosh. I have shoes from 88. All right.
I have underwear from 80s. Anyway, go ahead.
Lordy.
Keep going.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday. Who says we don't have
All right.
All right, let's go.
Listen, every week we jump into and share brand protection strategies for tackling some of your biggest public relations challenges. So we are so excited to chat with you today. And if you're joining us after the video broadcast on the podcast, we are so glad you're here. So Diane, tell us what we're covering. And I'm talking fast because we're doing 30 minutes today instead of an hour.
We're going to talk to business owners about how you can take care of all of your great ideas, get them down, get them into a plan, and execute them in 2021. So we want you to really think about your strategy for PR for 2021, because if you have the map and it's laid out, you'll actually execute it and it feels so good, and you look back and you can actually see what you've done. So that's great. So by the end of this episode, you're going to be able to put pen to paper or type away on that computer and come up with a concrete PR program to really elevate your brand and protect your brand like never before.
So many times people have these great ideas and you just, it comes to you in the shower and you don't write it down. And you're like, oh man, I should have done that. Weeks later, you're questioning yourself. Why didn't I write that down? So that's what we're going to talk about in the first 15 minutes here, is how you can create a PR plan and the key features that it should have, so that you can not only measure your success in 2021, but also compare to what happened last year too. So you really have that baseline to establish. And then we're going to look at some really specific tactics that you can use to help guide you in an effort to meet your objectives. Now, those are 2 PR terms, Sarah: tactics and objectives. Can you explain those to people who may just be tuning in?
For sure. So a tactic is an activity. So we're going to issue a press release, or we're going to create a podcast. So it's an activity that you do. An objective is a bit more of your roadmap, but larger than that, your objective is, how am I going to do it, in what time period, and what is my goal to doing it? So we're going to increase our podcast listeners by 25% in 2021 to elevate our thought leadership position. So an objective is really that roadmap of where, when, how long, and what effect you want it to have.
Thank you. Because sometimes, I get caught up in the inside baseball a little bit, and it's important for people who don't know, the terminology there, to get that good baseline, so that as they're following throughout the podcast or the vlog here, they know exactly what we're talking about. We're also going to bring you our kind of mini PR plan. We call it our event plan, but if you're just getting started on that, that's going to be our free downloadable today. There it is. So after this, you can log on.
And this is a long one. It's like 93 pages.
You can log on to our website, mnccommunications.com. When our blog goes live, you can click on that, download that, absolutely free to you. And it's really a great resource to get your PR planning started.
Absolutely. I wanted to add that your objectives must be measurable. That's the number one thing. So that's the key you have to think about. Not only do they have to be time sensitive, but they have to be measurable. because if you're not measuring them, it's not gonna. You can't sit there and say whether it was worth your time, especially as you're doing this next year. So that's really important. I just wanted to add that in there. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's all part and parcel of developing a SMART goal, which is, oh golly, now I'm going to have to remember the SMART goals.
Well, I'm not helping you with this.
I know.
We'll put the SMART goals in a minute. But anyway,
Yeah.
if you're joining us live, jump into the conversation. And can you answer, because we really want to hear this, did your business use a PR plan in 2020 to help you meet your company's goals? Because if they did, you can really use that as a baseline, which is great. We do this in December of every year. We look back to see how many of the goals we hit, what goals made sense, because goals change during the year, and heavens knows the goals during 2020 changed a lot. And in the comments section, just go ahead and let us know what you think. And if you're joining us later, you can post your questions on Facebook, or you can chat with us on YouTube. If we don't get to them while we're here live, we'll definitely get to them and get back to you in the next week. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent. SMART, by the way, is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
There
right?
you go. I knew you'd have it. I knew you'd have it.
It's all in there. It's all in there, baby. All right, so let's jump right into the PR plan. And what you're going to find right off the bat, and what we start with for every single client, is some research. And this, guys, this does not have to be extensive. We are not talking hours and hours spent in the library. What you want to find is usually some of the latest research. So if we're looking for, say, podcast statistics, you want them from 2019 or 2020. Any earlier than that, and they're completely out of date. You can do primary research. So you can do research of your own, which is primary. So say you had a membership group and you wanted to put out a survey to find out, hey, what podcast topics do you want to hear in 2021? That would be primary research. You can also pull secondary research, which would be what is the average listenership of podcasts across the country in 2019 or 2020, and that would be secondary research. So start with research to get you kind of thinking about a baseline, or thinking about, all right, we have some information of where we need to start from, and then you start planning the trip of where you're going to. That's the function of research.
I love primary research also when you're including your employees in it. Asking them what they think the best thing was that happened this year. What would they have liked to see you change? Where are the opportunities? Really involve them in that one-on-one primary research, and then go to the industry and find out where the industry is and what other people have talked about. And it helps inform what you're going to do, because the next part is the analysis. So you're going to do the SWOT analysis: strength, S for strength, W for weaknesses, O for opportunities, and T for threats. And I love this analysis because it really does change every year. And it really can inform you on where you want to put your emphasis, because we understand how important time is to you. You only have so much time. So what you do, you really want to have an impact. And the SWOT analysis can make such a difference if you're very, very careful in thinking about that. And lots of times I like to write it out and then let it percolate for a couple days and come back to it. And then I can really hone in on what I was thinking and let my brain work on it while I'm doing some other things.
It's interesting because we've been doing this for years and years. And by we, I mean you and Sarah, and going through the PR plans for ourselves and our clients. It's interesting to see how these things evolve and how they change over the years. So it's really important to look at this time of the year, really each and every year, to make sure that you're addressing the way things are changing, whether it's societal changes, economic changes. COVID-19 obviously has thrown a wrench in many people's plans this year. So how are you going to adapt for 2021 is really important.
And I think that leads right into the next thing, which is messaging. So, if you are a widget manufacturer, right, and you have,
going to come up. Right? You can't have a move chairs not widget.
How about a CBD manufacturer?
Right. So the CBD manufacturer, you've got your messaging that you want to get across about your product. We do this, and this type of research goes into it, and this type of manufacturing, and this type of packaging, and all of these things. That's your messaging that you want to get across throughout the year. But as we saw in 2020, that messaging, changes throughout the year as you're changing to situations on the ground. So, anxiety in 2020 became a huge issue for the CBD industry, where, it was certainly part of the messaging in January, but by April, it was a completely different sort of amount of the messaging that you would expect to see from a CBD company. Certainly by the time we are still homeschooling in August and September and October and November, anxiety is, a massive part of messaging that it may not have looked like it would be certainly in December last year. I mean, it was just a small part of it at this point in December last year. So you want to have your messaging ready to go and have it easily adaptable and updatable depending on the conditions on the ground throughout the year.
So that kind of leads us, we touched on objectives, and Diane and Sarah, you did a great job tag teaming that and explaining it to, people who may not know that inside baseball term. But when we are looking at objectives too for M&C, we use what's called the peso method. So that's when you're looking at what type of material that you have. Is it something that you pay for? That's the P. Is it something that you earned? Is it earned media coverage? Is it something that's shared? Is it a collaboration with somebody else? Or is it your own content? Like this would be, for us, owned content because we are producing this. So we work around that peso method within our PR plans to make sure that we have a really good balance of all four. And I think now in 2020, owned content with where we are and how easy it is to set up a camera and hit that record button, and how cheap lighting kits are and how cheap it is to make sure your audio is good. It's really, really important for businesses to be thinking about heading into 2021.
Absolutely. And I think that with peso, so I want to make sure another inside baseball term is earned. Earned means that you actually earned articles, earned the journalist doing a story on you. So any story that's in broadcast or digital or print media where a journalist came out or they did a Zoom with you, however, and they did an article on you, that's earned. So I want to make sure, so P is for paid, and paid can be what you pay for. So what you're buying. So are you buying Facebook ads? Are you buying LinkedIn ads? Where is your target audience and how are you hitting them consistently? And then you get to that earned. And I think that's really important. And then, of course, social, which we all know needs to be very, very consistent and owned, as Jordan said. And then measurable. So I talked about, did you do something last year? Is there an industry baseline? You want to find that baseline number. Some years you'll have things because there are new things coming out all the time where we don't have a baseline. And so that's okay. Go for it. Say, this is my goal for what I want to hit. This is the number of downloads on a podcast. This is the number of likes that I want to get, or engagement that I want to get on my social media. And then you'll have the baseline for next year, and then you can hit it with either a percentage or a number as you're making determining your objectives, your measurable objectives in the next, in 2020.
Right. And guys, I just want to remind everybody really quick, we have an event plan as the downloadable today, which walks you through each of these steps. So say you've got a new product coming out, you've got an opening, you're opening up a new shop or something like that. Use this to organize that event. And it's really kind of a stripped down version of the PR plan. So if you're just getting into public relations, you could certainly use this event plan to get yourself started on planning for 2021, but it will cover all the bases of getting you organized for a specific event.
So we want to know, how much time do you spend on your annual goals, and how do you measure your success? Because it's really difficult to pat yourself on the back unless you have that baseline that Diane was just talking about. So tell us in the comments, how much time do you spend? Is it a end of the year thing? Do you do it on January 1st? Is it kind of a company get together? We'd love to hear your comments and get back to you live during our feed right now.
The other thing I want to give as a tip is I like to do my goals and objectives, and then I like to review them quarterly. That way you kind of see where you are and what needs to be tweaked. And it's okay to tweak. I think so many people don't do goals and objectives because they're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Look what happened in 2020. Well, what I can tell you is in 2020, every quarter we tweaked what we were doing, not only what we had looked at what we had done. And sometimes we pulled goals and objectives out and said, no way that's happening this year. But we did something else, and we want to put that in there because this is what we did do, because this is what the world gave us. And that's when we moved the stairs. And so move the stairs is looking at what you're given and making the most out of it. So instead of whining and saying, if only, or getting deer in the headlights and frozen and saying, I have this plan, I can't do this plan, everything just changed. Change with it. Really focus in and say, what can I do? And what I find is when you say, what can I do, even if it's one small thing, it will spark your brain to go in another direction. And all of a sudden, that one small thing leads to another small thing. And before you know it, you've done a number of things that have really moved forward your business. So we try to move the stairs. And that's basically, I walked into a ballroom. I needed to get an interview. The stairs were on the wrong side of the riser, but they were bolted in. So I unbolted them and moved them to my side of the riser. So I got the interview first. You need to look at what you're given, and you need to move those stairs and make it work. And sometimes that means that what you had planned, it's out the window. No problem. The fact that you went through the planning process is going to put you so far ahead of so many other business owners. And you're not going to get the deer in the headlights because you're going to be able to move the stairs. You're going to be able to react, and you're going to be able to make the most of whatever the situation is. And certainly, if you think about it, you saw tons of companies move the stairs in 2020 in a way that they had never thought of to do before. So that's why we love that term, move the stairs.
Yeah, quite a few. Taking a number of different tactics, coming back to that word, to accomplish their objectives and really their annual goals, those who took the time to move this stairs. So I think it's really important as you're looking at building your PR plan for 2021, you take a step back and really look in the mirror and say, what am I good at? What is my team really good at? And how can we apply this to the tactics that we want to use to accomplish our goals, to accomplish our quarterly objectives? So for us, we look at our niche, or our niche, as Sarah calls it, and we say we're all former journalists. That's our niche. It's insider media relations. It's knowing exactly how the media operates. So what we like to do is really cater our tactics around what we already know and what we're all experts in, right?
Absolutely. So if you think about it, think about the media, because in a PR plan, many times they are your primary target audience. Yes, but because you have to get them to say yes if you're doing earned media before you can move that story out there. So where are they? If they're in the midst of covering all COVID all the time, you need a COVID story. You need a story that somehow relates. How are you helping? How are you helping your community during COVID? You see those stories right now. I can think last night, I bet you I saw 5 stories on how different groups and different people were helping during COVID. We're in Colorado. We had huge wildfires. I saw stories last night on how people were helping wildfires. Are you seeing a trend here? What is the media looking for right now? They're looking for help stories. They're looking for stories on ways people can save money because so many people are out of work. They're looking for employment stories. And so all of those so think about how your company is helping. What is your company doing? Is there something that your company should be doing that's authentic to you, but that you might be also able to tell the story? Is there a story of somebody in your company who was hurting, who's doing better now? We have a client who's just hired hundreds of people. And I just said, Is there somebody in who you've hired who was in a really bad place, but now that they have a job, they have hope and they're looking forward to what's coming next? That's a great story. So that's how you want to move the stairs, and think about that as far as getting that earned media, getting that, getting those reporters to actually listen to you. And again, your company does not need to be front and center in that story. It just needs to be a part of the story. And if you do that enough, it will really move your company and build your brand. And we know brand protection is so important. So getting out there and building that brand is what you're trying to do here.
Right. One of the tactics that we talk about all the time for doing that is Twitter. I mean, if you are trying to talk to media and you're trying to understand what they're covering, what they might be interested in covering, and build those relationships, you need to be on Twitter. I was just talking to a client yesterday about this. Twitter is where you, as what happened yesterday is the reporter showed up and had a beautiful, gorgeous new engagement ring. And I happen to know that because I follow her on Twitter, that she had just gotten engaged within the last couple of months. And so that was a great, just kind of chit chat talking point as she was setting up the camera and we were getting ready. I was asking her about her upcoming plans. And let me tell you, if you ask a gal about her upcoming wedding plans, right, Jordan, she's going to talk. She's going to chit chat. So, Twitter is just a great way to be following the reporters, understanding what they're covering, what if their beat has changed a bit, throughout the year, and to just build those authentic relationships so that you're able to say, oh gosh, I saw you just had a baby, or, boy, you're doing a whole lot of legislature stories right now. What are you looking for? What can I help you with? You do that by building relationships on Twitter.
Yeah, it's just so important because you're not just using it as a tool to see what stories are covering, what's happening in their personal lives. If they're putting it on Twitter, they want to engage with you. Nobody's going to put something on Twitter that they don't want the whole world to know, right? So if they're a sports fan,
that's a whole nother podcast. That's right.
Yeah,
but I do think that they are also coming towards the end of the year, and they're coming up on their reviews as well. And how much engagement their articles, their stories are getting on social media is something that their bosses are looking at. If you can comment and share a story on a reporter that you're interested in, and if you can even add to it, oh my gosh, they're over the moon. And so you want to make sure that if there are reporters that you are very interested in, then start that relationship with them on Twitter. It's the first place to start, and it's a great place to start.
And I can tell you firsthand, this is a thing that is becoming more and more common in newsrooms across the country. What is your digital presence? Because as more people shift from traditional media, television, and reading the newspaper, they're getting their news online, or they're getting their news on a mobile phone too. So it's becoming increasingly important for reporters, and it's a lot of work for them. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of them truly enjoy it, and they will enjoy building those relationships with you, whether it's bonding over their beat or bonding over sports.
Or wedding planning.
Or wedding planning, yeah.
And Sarah, it matters that they have pictures, right?
Well, yeah, the other thing that we have lots of success with, and it's based on our insider media relations experience, is giving them really high quality content that they can use, because they're racing around. They're so busy, they may not have time to get to a client that's an hour away. There's multiple reasons that they may not be able to get to you. But what you can do is say, you know what, I have a great story. I have a, end of the year donation total for these machines that we're collecting donations on. And here I've got some great pictures and I have some video, and here you go. It's all packaged up and you send it to them. And that makes their life a million times easier. They're very likely to use, another client, we have sunset, sunrise photos that get used on meteorology, on the weather reports all the time. So think about what you can do for them that gives them a little bit of content to work with. Has to be high quality. It doesn't have to be professional, but it has to be high quality and, good looking photos, good looking video. And you can help your media partners that way.
And please remember, especially in this day and time, and I can tell you, even it was, I don't know, 20 years ago, I was last running a newsroom. It was important then, but it's even more important now. Diversity is a huge issue. So think about what you can do to add to that conversation. Who your spokesperson is, what employees that you can actually help, what are the issues. So pictures with diverse groups is very, very important as well. So just think about that as you're thinking about what kind of pictures you're going to send to the journalists. It's a very important issue for everybody right now.
So that's our niche, the insider media relations, and that's just kind of how we see things from a PR standpoint. Now, how you may look at things within your company may be a little different. Maybe you're a bunch of computer programmers and your way to tell a story is through graphic design or coding, or I'm not sure. There's a million different ways to go about this, but the key to unlock it is figuring out what you're good at and then moving forward with that. And if you need some help, feel free to give us a call, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So next week, have we decided what we're talking about next week, guys? Did we forget to decide that? So join us next week. It'll be great. That's what I'm going to say.
It'll be great. Awesome.
Tell you what, why don't you tell us what we should talk about next week? Drop us a question.
Idea. That's the weatherman in you coming out doing a nice save.
That's right. Send us a message. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you want us to chat about. We're more than happy to do so. I mean, we'll be right on the week before the holidays, so we're pretty excited. And end of the year, we want to hear from you.
You know what I'm hoping is that everybody, as we sort of cruise into, the holiday week and everybody's taking some time off, use this time to take a little bit of a breather. Think about what went well this year, what you maybe had challenges with this year, where you want to be. Visualize where you want to be January 1 or whatever that first Monday in January is.
On a beach.
The beach, right. The beach. Wouldn't that be glorious? We haven't seen the beach in a long time.
I can't get to a beach right now. I've had to cancel 2 beach vacations in the past 2 months.
But we're all hanging in there and we're all sort of envisioning. And that's where I think the time at this point in the year is really, really well spent, is thinking about where am I headed next year? And so as you're doing that, as you're using the one sheet, the event plan and the objectives and thinking about how you're going to get there, let us know what your thoughts are, what your questions are, how what's your toughest nut to crack. And that's the stuff that we love. We love to crack difficult nuts.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep moving on. So many things just went through my head. Okay, anyway, so let's just recap real quickly here. We talked about the fundamentals of a PR plan. First, you're going to do your research. Really, really important to do that research. Then you're going to set up your goals and objectives. And then you're going to, and with that, you're going to do your SWOT, and you're going to use PESO we talked about. And then you're going to think about your tactics. And I like to do them for the year, but really break them down month by month and relook at them quarterly to see how you're doing. So that's great, because then at the end, where we are right now, you can evaluate. And that's the last part of it. So that's great. And remember some of our insider media strategy tips. Those reporters have had a hell of a year too.
Oh man,
I would not have wanted to be a reporter this year for anything. I mean,
love their money.
And a little compassion and a little love on Twitter can go a long way. And they deserve it, because they have had their backs up against the wall in trying to cover everything for all of us with business that had to change on a dime. They were doing that hourly. And many times their lives were in danger as they were doing it. So kudos to the reporters out there and to all the people in news and management and all of that. It was a heck of a year, and they did a heck of a job. And don't forget to download our Move the Stairs event plan, which is going to walk you through everything that we went through today. So, guys, thanks for another great podcast. Jordan, thank you for pulling it out of the fire for me. I appreciate that. And we hope you have a great weekend, right, guys?
Yeah, we'll see you next